need to be in the recording, but for the Google Doc, which I think is what you might be talking about, because Docs is like the Word equivalent in Google Drive, Sheets is the Excel equivalent, and Slides is PowerPoint. So that's pretty much it boiled down. But do you want it to be collaborative, where the students are collaborating on a draft together, or are the students creating a draft and sending it to you, and you are the only person who sees it?
Well, two things, and actually three things. So both of those things that you said, that they would be working on a draft. Not so much that they would be collaborating on a draft, but you know how you do workshops in English 160, and you bring a draft to class, and then students read it and give you feedback.
Oh yeah, like peer review. Okay.
Exactly that. And so I'd like them to be able to share a document, and the students, I know that there are different ways of collaborating, and the little bit of collaborating that I've done, sometimes it's involved people writing a document together, but I think I'm not as clear as I feel I should be on the distinction between writing and making changes to the document, or commenting, and what is it that I want. And I want to be able to explain it clearly to students, because these are first-year students, and I know they're all pretty tech savvy, but they're not necessarily savvy with learning technology as opposed to play technology.
That's true. Okay, well, I can do a little bit of an overview, and then we'll definitely go right into sharing too, because that is the biggest element of Google Drive. The rest of it is essentially just an online filing cabinet. So you have your folders and your files. So we're going to go over a little bit of everything. And Paula, if I don't go over everything that you needed to hear, I'm definitely going to send you a link to the recording from yesterday, because I went through everything yesterday. It was 40 full minutes. But if you have any questions as we go, definitely interrupt me. Let me know, because Google Drive can be a little weird.
Actually, before you start, could you send me the link to what you did yesterday too? Because
of course,
I was in a different Google meeting, I think, when that one was going on, and it wasn't recorded. So
okay, yeah, I will upload it to YouTube and then send out the link to the three of you if you would like, just so you have it. It was me and Kevin Kuna, so a good time. It was fun. Okay, so I should be sharing the screen now, and now I'm showing you my workshop's email. So Google Drive, if you aren't aware, is basically like an online storage system, but there's also opportunities for collaboration, for just general sharing, and just a nice place to put things so that they are central. Because with Google Drive, we can access it through our Marywood email. So we can access it wherever we have internet access, whether that's your phone, your iPad, anything at work, and then at home. You can access everything in real time. So if you worked on something in the office on Monday and you want to work on it from home on Tuesday, if you have it in Google Drive, you definitely can. So that's really the biggest thing. But then you could also use it for your courses and how to interact with students. So that's where the sharing elements will come in, because there are a couple things that are a little quirky, especially when sharing with students, but we'll go through everything so it's not so confusing when you try to do it on your own, because it doesn't really explain it, because we have little quirks with the sharing elements. So we're going to start in the email. If you want to follow along, you can. If not, you can just watch my screen. I always start in my Google email, my Marywood email, because then I know which drive I'm going to. You can go to drive.google.com. It'll get you to the same place. But that assumes that you're signed in with your default email. And if you're like me and signed in with multiple emails, I'm looking at my personal one right now, my Kowaleski one, whereas I want to be looking at my workshops one. So if you want to open the drive for a specific email account, like I want to open this workshops one, I usually just go into the email and then click on the Google Apps icon in the top right. It's a 3x3 waffle, and you click on it, and drive is the triangle. And then you can see I have my workshops drive open. So you could always check which drive you're in by looking up at the top right for your profile picture. And then if you hover over it, it tells you which Google account you're in. So that's just important to know in case you're wondering where a certain document is. You might be in the wrong drive if you manage multiple emails. It's slightly stressful, but just look for that profile picture. So when you get into Google Drive, you have a couple sections that are super important to keep in mind. The first one being My Drive, because it is everything that you've created or uploaded, because you can upload PC files like PDFs and things like that, and anything that you've moved over from the Shared With Me section. So you'll see this little folder right here. It has a little arrow on it. I don't know if I can zoom, but it has a little arrow, and that means it's a shortcut from Shared With Me, because Shared With Me, because of the title, is anything that's been shared with you by someone else, either directly or indirectly. So that would be if you go to our ETS website, almost everything there is in Google. So you'll probably see a lot of those documents in the Shared With Me section if you've been on our website. And that is an indirect share because it's just there and you interacted with it by visiting the page. So then all those documents show up here. So this place tends to get a little messy, which is why the shortcut is such a lovely thing. So if, for example, I really want to look at this how to create an announcement document, I don't want to have to go to Shared With Me all the time to look for it because it's a bit of a mess. You can just right click on it, say add shortcut to Drive, and you just kind of select where you want it to go. So just like with your computer, you have like your overall locations. And then if you click on these arrows, you get the folders within those locations. So if you wanted to put it in a specific folder, you could. But I'm just going to put it in My Drive in general, just to show you what it looks like. And you'll notice it still stays here because it lives here and Shared With Me. But then that same file is just ported over here for easier access for you. So it's really just for organization, because then I can move it to other places in the folders. I can then interact with it in any way I want, as long as permissions allow. It's just a new feature that I think is very useful, especially for those things that have been shared with you that you don't want to have to search for all the time. So back to My Drive, we have folders at the top, and you can create these yourself just by clicking on New and clicking Folder. So I can say something like documentation for workshops. So you just give it a nice little name, and it appears right up here with everything else. And the reason why it's not alphabetical, for me at least, is because I have it sorted by last modified. So that means whatever I did most recently is going to show up first. So you can always change that by clicking on this little term, last modified, and changing it to name, which is more standard for most people. And then you can get really specific, especially if things are shared. So you can modify or change this setting to last modified by me or last opened by me. So that's super important if you have a bunch of shared documents. But I'm just going to change it to name so everything's alphabetical. So I have my new folder. Just like in your computer, you can double click on it to open it, and then you can drop files here from your drive, or you can upload them by clicking New. You can file upload or folder upload, so you could do a bit of both. You can also create Google Docs and Google Sheets directly into a folder. And the reason you might want to do that is if you're creating folders for each of your courses, just to make things organized, you can then share the folder and everything within it will be shared too. So you don't have to do multiple links to things unless you really wanted to. Like Kealty, if you had a shared Google Sheet, you might want to link to just that Google Sheet instead of having them go through a folder and then click on a link to the sheet, you know. So it's really up to what you want to do. But if you have a whole big folder you just want to share with your students, whether it's like full of images or full of articles that they should read, folders are good for that, just so you can share everything within it with one link. I do want to mention that this whole sharing thing can be done in two ways. For the folders, it could be done when you're in the folder. You can just kind of click on the name and click on share or get shareable link. Both of those bring you to the same place. And this is going to become familiar, especially if you plan on sharing things. The top part is share with people in groups, which is more specific. So if you had a bunch of names of people you wanted to share with, that's where you put the names. And that would only be shared with those people with the permissions that you set. So I am currently the owner. If I put my other account in here, you'll see that I can make them an editor or a viewer of the folder. So if they're an editor, it means they can organize and add and edit files. If they're a viewer, it means they can only view the stuff that's in the folder. For documents, it's a bit different, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The get link section, you just have to click on it to change your mind if you want to get a link instead of sharing it with specific people. The only thing with the link is that you need to change the audience and the permission. So the audience by default is restricted to whoever is in this share with people in groups area, so that you can send this link to them and they can open it via link instead of going to Drive. But when you click on restricted, there are two other options. So this is where things get a little quirky. Marywood University Gmail only stands for faculty and staff. So anyone who has that maryu.marywood.edu email, they're included in this group. So unfortunately, that does not include students. So if you're wanting to share a folder or even a document, because that applies too, with students, then you want to click anyone with the link. So it technically makes it public, but I mean, it's very unlikely that people are going to share this link beyond your course, especially if you have it as a link in your Moodle or Brightspace course. But you'll also notice that you can change the permission for the audience as well. So this is more of a general share as opposed to the specific share with people type of sharing. So this get link, you change your audience to anyone with the link if you're wanting to share with students. And then you click on this viewer area and you can change it to editor. So if you wanted to get collaborative with your students in your course, you can make them an editor of this folder and they can upload things. They would have to sign in, as it indicates down here. But then if they're a viewer, they don't need to sign in. They just need to click on the link to view the folder. So it's kind of just like a little overview of sharing for folders. It's a little bit different for documents, but it's the same with specific sharing and then link sharing. Do you guys have any questions about that so far? I think I went through that a little quick. But
so to make sure that I understand, so if the way I'm imagining just sharing a Google Sheet that they need to be able to edit, what you described, there's a different process because it's one document rather than a folder.
Right. That's only slightly different. I will show you how to do that right now just because it makes the most sense chronologically. So say we're setting up a Google Sheet. You would click on new. It said folder, but I didn't want that. Click on new and then click on Google Sheet for an example. And you open it up. It's super blank. Give it a name if you like. And then probably before you share it, I would set up the different columns and the things you expect from them. But once you're ready to share, you click on the share button and it gives you those same two options. So I guess a more secure option would be to share individually with each student. But I think if you're putting it in Moodle, it would be easier to use a link just because then they probably don't have to sign in. I don't know. It's a little bit difficult. I think either one will work. If you add the students' names, it's just a little more work on your end. Whereas getting the link, you can change that audience to anyone with the link. And if you want them to edit it, then you click on editor. So that means that anyone with the link can edit this. If you keep it in your course, you should be good. But then you also have the option to share with individual students. So if you wanted to just put the names of your students in here, you can then change their permission to editor or commenter or viewer. But if you're wanting them to collaborate, it's going to be editor. And the only thing I would say, if this is the option you want to go with, is to make sure you click on this little settings icon, because this gives you this very important one where it says editors can change permissions and share. So that means if you kept this checked, and it is by default, that anyone you added as an editor can then change the permissions of other people and share it with other people. And you can stop that just by unchecking this so that any editors you add are then just editors of the file. They can't do anything else with it. So that's the only extra step I would do if you're planning on doing it individually. Otherwise, if you're doing a link, it doesn't matter.
So so that was what I was going to ask. So if I do it with a link, then I can send that link to students via email, and that's not the same thing as sharing with people in groups,
Right.
Or putting their names in individually. Okay, so that's kind of more secure, and can they forward the link to somebody?
That's the thing with the links. Technically, they could. So if they wanted to post it somewhere, and I'm not sure why they would, but there's always that worry. They could, and then because it says anyone with the link, anyone can open it and then do stuff to it. So I would say the more secure option is the share with people in groups. I'm going to actually add someone for real, because when you set them up, you can choose to notify, so they will get an email that they are, they have this thing that they can edit. It tells them what access they have. It gives them a link to the actual thing you're sharing. So it's always nice to notify people. But just for the sake of brevity, when I add a person, it changes the icon on the share button so you know that it's shared. So I have my one other person that I added here. It'll list all of the people you shared it with and their permissions. So if you wanted to just give them temporary access to comment and view, that's an option. If you want to make them the owner, I don't know why you would, but you can. You can remove people at any time, and you can change their permissions at any time. Because you're the owner, you kind of have overall jurisdiction of the file. So
as long as you don't make somebody else an owner, they can't do that.
Exactly. And you could always change that little setting in here about the editors can change permissions and share. So if you forgot to do it initially and you sent it out and you're like, oh no, I forgot to change that setting, you could always come back in and change it, and it automatically saves and applies. So you can always retroactively do things, which is really nice. Though I will say, because I left this with anyone with the link, now I can send this link to whoever I want and they can access it because of the audience. But Riley, the other person I added, is the only one who can edit it. So you can have both. You can have a link, and then you could have specific people editing or commenting or viewing. So you can really do whatever combination you think is best. Though I would say for a class, I might individually add them. I'm almost certain that it works because I put in my student account before. It sends them the email, and as long as their name is there with the email, they should be able to get in and edit just fine. It will say something like this, though, I will say. You can just share it anyway, though.
So can you tell me the difference between a commenter and an editor? Because
Yeah,
can
sure.
a commenter can't change the text but can make notes on the side? Is that what that is? Okay.
Yeah, I think the commenter option is the best for peer review because I'll show you why. If I want to maybe use a Google Doc I already have. So I have this Google Doc about notes for the specific workshop. If I shared it with, let's see, I'll take Kevin out of here. He helped me yesterday. But if I shared it with you, Fran, and with Keelty, and also Paola, I can make you all commenters on this document. I'll notify you so you get an email. And you can interact with this if you want. You don't have to. But once you add commenters to a document, anything they change on this document shows up as a comment on the side that the owner can then reject, approve, or respond to. So it's kind of like track changes, but more live and collaborative. So it's pretty cool, and I think it's a really great option for peer review, because then they can't change the core document, but they can make suggestions and edits.
Do you have a handout that explains that? Because I'm thinking that it would be helpful for my students. On the one hand, I can remind them, and when we're going into a workshop, that you're going to be reading somebody else's work. You're not going to be rewriting it for them. You're going to be asking questions or saying this isn't clear here, or where's your thesis, or you don't have one. But
right.
But I want them to be commenters and to be able to get that feedback. And I want to. Because I'm going to have them actually at the end, they're going to turn in their their workshop drafts and their final draft, so that students will get credit for the draft, their participation as editors.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see what I can do. If I don't see any resources online, I'll definitely whip something up. So that's not a problem.
And if you don't, I know you've got boatloads of things to do. I can make a quick and dirty one too, but I just figured if you had it, why you reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, I have a document about sharing because that's something a lot of people ask about. So I have a document specifically about that, but I don't have one about how the different editing accesses work from like the collaborative side. So that would be something I could definitely work on for future because that would be useful.
Okay, well, thanks.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys wanted to actually look at how the commenting side of things looks, but if you look at your email, you probably got an email from the workshops account about your commenting access to the specific document. So if you wanted to click on it, you can, and then if you started typing, you'd see that it comes up as a comment on the side. And I can show you some of the little quirks that happen when you're in a document with other people working on the same thing. Because you can actually bring up a chat with people who are in, and you can see any past edits, anything that may have been changed. So it's really cool and might be useful to tell your students about, especially for you, Fran, with the peer review elements. So as people come in, you can see the little circles pop up on the top. And as the circles pop up, there is a little chat icon too. And then you can say, yes, that's what I meant in the chat, so that you can see who's talking. And if you needed to talk about something, you can put it right in the chat, or you can put it on the document because it's not going to be, permanent. But it comes up, and that's pretty nice that you can talk to people. And if you were looking at my screen, you can see that I have a comment each from Kealty and Fran, and I have the option to accept the suggestions or reject them. So I can accept it, and then it becomes part of the document. I can reject it, and it goes away. So the owner has complete control over their own document, and they kind of just see whatever suggestions are being made, which is pretty cool. Something that's really awesome as well is this last edit was seconds ago text. So you'll notice that Google Drive always auto saves, which is amazing, especially if you have shoddy internet. It'll be easy to look back at your progress and know that it actually happened. You can see this little cloud icon that says, saving almost constantly. But this last edit was seconds ago text is really cool because if you are the person whose document or sheet or slide has been edited and you don't like the edits anymore, and you're like, wow, I wish I didn't accept that, you can go back to a previous version of the document where no edits have been made, or you were the only one who owned it, so it's back to like its original form. So right now I have this purple. It tells me that I accepted it, though I know myself that Kealty suggested it. But as you go down, any things that you have accepted will stay in a certain color based on the side here. So it's purple because I am marked with purple. But you can see the changes or opt to get rid of them. If I wanted to go to a past version, you just kind of click on it. And Kevin made this edit with the dash, and I accepted it. And I can go back and restore this version if I like. So if I didn't like all the changes that were being made, I can just revert back to that previous version and have my text as it was. So as the owner, that's something you can do. I believe editors can also see the versions, but I don't think commenters can. So editors pretty much have co-ownership of everything that they edit, but the commenters just get to make suggestions.
And Riley, how did you get to that versions window that opened up on the side?
So you see this text right here? This says last edit was made.
Last edit made. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a link, but it secretly is. So then you get the version history, and you can name them too if that's easier. So you can say, oh, peer review happened today. So you know why those changes were made.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's see, is there anything else I forgot? Oh, any past comment history. So any things that were suggested in the past, you can click on that little message icon. And I still see Fran's suggestion, even though I rejected it technically, I can still reply to it too and say maybe why I didn't like that change. And same with anything that has been added and I accept it, I can reply why I liked it or why it works. And then you should get the notification that I replied to it. So it's pretty interactive. And if you have students like working on peer review together, or even in a Google Sheet, if everyone's collaborating, you still get the option to chat with everyone, and you can also make comments that other people will see. So it's really nice to kind of get everyone working on the same thing. Are there any questions about anything?
And those options all work in Sheets and Slides as well?
Yes. So they pretty much have the same sharing options. Oh, sorry, Siri got excited. It has the same icons. So I have this shared with a link, but if I shared it with my other people, they can come in, edit things. You have that last edit was a couple minutes ago, so I can see a version history, and people can make comments as well. There's actually a dedicated insert comment icon in here because it doesn't have a sidebar like the documents do. So if I wanted to make a comment on a specific cell, I can just click on it, hit that comment button, and say, great job, or something like that. And then it just kind of appears. So you can see there's a little comment on it because there is a very little triangle that I can't seem to zoom in on, but there's a little yellow triangle that denotes that there's a comment to view. So
Nice.
it pretty much is applicable to any Google file. And I will say that like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, if you upload them to Google Drive, you can edit them in their respective Google applications and still retain that file. So you can upload a doc, like a Word doc, and still edit it. The formatting might be a little different, but it's really not going to make too much of a difference.
So is there a way to use this Google Drive to share videos?
Yes, actually. That's another nice thing, because if you have a shared drive that isn't Google Drive, like on your office computer, like your personal drive or like a shared drive for a department, you can't upload pictures or videos to them. But in Drive, you would just use File Upload, and I might have a video. I think I made one this morning. So if I look for my video, which is this one, I can just double click on it. It starts a little upload in the bottom right. Because it's a video, it takes a little longer, but it really didn't take that long. And you can actually right click on your video and click share. So you can do the same thing as you did with docs and sheets and slides. You can share it with people so that they have like access to it. The only difference is that there's no like Google application to edit a video, so they won't be able to edit it really, but you can share it with people via link. So if you uploaded something here and you're like, here's my video about this thing, you can get a link for it and send it out to people so they can access the video.
Okay.
So that was a great question.
So do you think, so my students are doing little mini presentations, and Fran was saying like some of the issues with Bongo. I'm wondering if, so I could make a folder and then they could share their 3-minute video into that folder. Is that right?
Oh yeah, technically you can do that. If you created just a folder for them, like if you create a folder and it's like videos for 826, create that folder, then you can share it either with them directly, like put their names in there, or get the link. You just have to make sure that they're editors so they can add to the folder. So then they can come into their drive, they'll see that it's uploaded, or rather it's shared with them, the folder, and they can just upload their videos. So that is an option, yeah. Though, how short are the video presentations? Are they more than 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, then never mind. I was going to say the Moodle inline video application, but it's only 2 minutes, so never mind.
Yeah, they're like 5-minute videos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. I would say that this is a good option.
Sorry.
And what would you think is the best option as far as creating the video?
I would say, let's see, with recording options, sometimes they have like actual like webcam video recording things on their computer, though that's not always the case. So I would say, well, this is tricky because now we have Google Meet, but we only have Google Meet recording options until September. And then students weren't able to record in the first place. And then with Zoom, they're only for faculty really, so they don't have access to record on Zoom. So I'm wondering if maybe YouTube has an option for that. I guess that's kind of the beauty of Bongo, is that if you set up an assignment for them where they submit a video response, then that recording software is already there. Though I understand why you might not want to use it. But yeah, that's a little tough.
Now, doesn't Bongo limit how long a video can be? Isn't 5 minutes too long for Bongo too?
I think you can set it up. If you're doing like a Bongo assignment, you can set it up for a max duration. I think 2 hours might be the limit, which is, a bit absurd for a short presentation, 2 whole hours. But I've seen that like in the OPI when I went in to go like troubleshoot things, like, wow, you can set that for 2 hours. Like you'd be sitting there forever watching those presentations. But yeah, you can definitely set that up as the instructor when you're making the assignment. And if you guys wanted to talk about that, I would be happy to set up a meeting, either as like a little group like we're doing now, or individually. We can talk about it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use it.
Right. Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I may still try to use Bongo then, rather than having them have to figure out how they're going to videotape. I guess I was thinking it was Zoom, but now I realize they can't use Zoom for creating their videos.
Right. And I think you can also, I could be wrong, I think you can also enable them to have a screen share option for like a Bongo assignment. So they'd be able to record their video and their screen share, because that's what the science-y departments have been using for exam proctoring. So they've been able to share their screen as they're taking the test, and then their camera, so they're there. So they'd be able to show their presentation, which is super useful.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm willing to use Bongo if that's the only option. And I don't want my students to feel like they have to make long, in my literature class, they're not going to have to make presentations. They can just actually use the video option within. But for English, for composition and rhetoric, they're supposed to make presentations of their research paper, and they're going to be like what Kealty is doing. They would be 5 minutes or so. And rather than have them do them live, I'm going to have them record them, just because I think it's so, I think having the asynchronous presentation or synchronous presentations would just be so hard for them.
right.
And uses a lot of bandwidth. So I think I'm just going to have them record. But I want more than a 2-minute presentation on a research paper.
Yeah, and I think like if you wanted to have them like synchronous, you can probably do it through Zoom. If you didn't like Bongo, because then you can have them share their screens. Yeah, people like talk, but that's really up to what you want. Because I think if you want it asynchronous, then Bongo assignments might be nice. If you want it synchronous, I would say a Zoom meeting with the right settings, because it gets a little tricky. But if you guys wanted to ever meet about that, just let me know. I have availability before the start of the semester, so you could just let me know.
Okay.
I'll probably follow up on that with you for sure, Riley.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like I don't know how your Fridays look, but mine is surprisingly free tomorrow. So if like you all wanted to meet at the same time about it, we can do that. Or if tomorrow doesn't work, or it does at different times, I could just send out my Calendly link and we can do it that way.
Okay.
So,
I need to sort of think it through a little bit more, and like try to play around with because I not only have people doing presentations individually, I also have role play that I need to figure out.
okay.
So, and that with the pressure of doing a synchronous presentation is hard enough, but a synchronous role play is really tough, because then they're really put on the spot.
Right.
So I would rather let them have some opportunity to practice with their partner.
That makes sense.
Think about how to do that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you can think it through. I'll put my link here in the chat. Let's see, calendly.com/Kowaleski. It has like my calendar set up with it, so whatever is there is something I can do. So.
Okay, so that's always a good question when people put things in the chat, but then the chat is over. How do I have access to that?
Oh, for like here in the Google Meet?
Yeah.
It will show up in the recording actually, because we're still recording. So then at this timestamp in the recording, it'll show up. But I can send it to you in email, so it's there.
I'm copying it and then I just, okay.
Yeah, if you put that in your address bar, it should bring up the one-on-one training that's 60 minutes. I mean, it could be less, could be more. I don't really care, but it'll then show a bunch of circles that are blue, which indicates which days I have availability, and then it'll show you the times on those days.
Oh, okay. I'm going to bookmark that so that if I need some time.
Yeah.
I'm, for whatever crazy reason, I just also a month ago got a new computer and I went to a Mac from a PC. So
Ooh.
I'm still figuring out how to do a lot of things.
Oh, I love my Mac. I really do. I've had Macs for years, and I don't have a desktop. I was really back in April when I was thinking, oh my God, we're going to be in our home offices forever.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I should buy a Mac desktop, and we didn't, which is fine. But I really have liked this. Is I think this is my second MacBook Air.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
I really like it a lot.
Well, I apologize in advance for all the PC-centric documentation, because that's all I have. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I mean, it's really, in terms of the documentation for how to do stuff, it's really pretty transparent. It's just, it's kind of learning the keyboard feel, and
Right.
I don't do well. My wrists get tired using the mouse pad, so I have a mouse. And that makes a big difference for me. I've been looking, because one of the things that, as you can tell, I'm leaning over my computer now. I was thinking of getting a stand and an auxiliary keyboard so that I could have the stand up and have, the camera be at a different angle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Last presentation. And then to have but then I'm like this, when I have to get up and keyboard something. So I'm thinking of getting an auxiliary keyboard to go with this. But then I'm waiting until the semester starts so I can see how much I'm going to have to be here and how much I'll be able to be in my work office, because I have a camera there and a keyboard. So I'll wait and see how that works out first.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different to go between the different systems.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been crazy making that transition. Then I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Where's the mouse pad?
I keep thinking it's only been a couple of months, but it's really been 6 months, and I'm going to a new office. So
Yeah. It's going to be different all around.
Mm-hmm.
But
I really appreciate all your time. I have to run.
Yeah, sure.
I will be in touch about a couple of other things along the way. I really appreciate your